the first thing you want to understand is it's any great interviewer's job to make you spill the beans or put pressure on you during an interview. So in this video, I'm going to talk about some techniques you would want to consider employing in order to both prevent this from happening and also during the interview, what can you do to better manage this situation. The first thing I want to talk here is preparing the edge scenarios. Now, I cannot talk about the technical part of the interview, but for the behavioral types of questions, there are some pretty well-known edge cases, namely the failure stories. So prepare a couple of failure stories from your career and be prepared, to talk about them with the STAR method and with quantifiable information, and of course, true failures that you actually had. The other place you would want to look for edge scenarios is in lists with the most commonly asked questions, specifically for your role and your seniority. Why do I say this? Because I know those lists, if they are good lists, they will contain elements specific to your qualities and to the main qualities required to do your job well. And most of the time you'll find something new, something you haven't really prepared for. Just keep in mind those lists are not the first thing you want to do preparing for an interview, but rather, as a way to train yourself, a way for you to revise those if you're role-playing, for example, with someone, or if you're role-playing by yourself. Now, the second thing you want to avoid at all cost going into interviews to go the interview tired. So if you're just getting started to prepare for the interview the day before, which is unfortunately not a very uncommon situation, I would say to be careful about how you spend your time. Like, don't prepare until 5 in the morning. Just prepare for only a limited amount of time, and then keep in mind that it will make a difference if you go with a clear mind into that interview. I tell you this from various experience and while talking to so many people that they only wished they had a good night's sleep the night before the interview. Is the next tip here is nowadays these interviews are all held remotely, video interviews, and one downside of these things is that people tend to over prepare their cheat sheets. And when you over prepare those cheat sheets, if you think about it, you'll have a tendency to always look up for the information in those cheat sheets. Whereas if you have 20 cheat sheets and ask you something for which you haven't prepared for, which is the job of a great interviewer, if you're going through all those 20 cheat sheets and you won't find your answer, then you're going to get stuck. So that's why you want to avoid overthinking those cheat sheets. There are different types of candidates. There are people who do better than others with the cheat sheet. So I would very much suggest you to test yourself, try it out, see if cheat sheets are something that will work for you. Now, something very interesting that I found might work for many of you is to practice mindfulness just before the interview, to self-motivate. If you lack motivation going to that interview, to tell yourself you're going to do well, you're doing great. If you prepared yourself, you have not much to worry about. But the idea is that you must have a motivational boost right before the interview in order for you to keep you motivated during that actual experience. This is something that I found quite interesting and recommended by many other people with experience running these job interviews. Number 5 here, expect this to happen. So as I said in the beginning of the video, these interviewers are skilled and they are there for a reason. And if you think it this way, it's not as straightforward as this, like, yeah, of course they're gonna ask me something, they're gonna give me stuck. First of all, you should read the room very carefully. For example, you'll know that most of the time the hiring manager will make the decision. You'll know most of the time that the bar raiser is supposed to get you stuck with some question, or they will ask you something that's more special. But if someone else is asking you a question and you feel like the question will get you stuck, well, of course, that there's only that much importance that question has in that interview. So if you don't have an answer for it, doesn't mean automatically will fail that interview. So try to read the room and try to find niche ways to get out of that situation, because like it or not, this is their best shot at finding the best candidate that they have for that role, because there's no such thing as the ideal candidate for the perfect candidate for any role, because there's no such thing as a perfect role in the first place. So try to read the room during the conversation, try to use a little bit of emotional intelligence, and this will help you, to better understand the trouble that you've got into during that conversation. So by knowing who you're speaking to, by reading a little bit through the lines, you will likely find most of the time more handles that you would want to exploit here to get over this tense moment. And last but not least, okay, say you got stuck, say you really don't have an answer to the question. It's not the end of the world, and oftentimes it's not the question that gets you stuck, but the performance after that it's the actual problem. So that's what I'm saying. If practicing mindfulness will give you a motivational boost before the interview, this is because, especially to avoid a scenario where you go on a downwards trend throughout the interview, you want to go ideally in an upwards trend or in the same high trend at all costs. And if you go one time you don't have an answer, okay, you go like this, but then you get back up on track. So this is what I'm saying. Like, it is something. It is a quest in a way for you to become a better version of yourself. And employers will ideally appreciate the fact that you literally go above and beyond to try to answer your question, and you are being sincere if you don't have an answer to their question. It happened to me plenty of times for candidates for very senior roles to tell me about immediately after the interview, then I'm sure I bombed this interview. I didn't have an answer to a question that was, pretty basic, and then they were offered the job. So it's not necessarily that if you think that you bombed the interview during the interview that's going to happen. So try to stay focused, try to do the best performance you have during that actual interview, and after the interview, they will have time to deliberate. And it's also a very plausible scenario that if they didn't like your performance right now, but they were impressed with your overall CV and overall, other interviews, they will call you back for another opening, and this could happen as soon as a couple of weeks in some cases. So although keep in mind it's a journey. It's not and one thing. If you go one time down, it's you hit a wall. No, it's not at all like this. So these would be some of the methods that you would want to keep in mind, going into an intense interview.